For those that may be listening at home, just a couple of items of note for our future candidate forums. The Borough Assembly Candidate Forum will be right here at noon at the Cape Fox Lodge. That's next Wednesday. It is by reservation only if you would like to join us for lunch. Lunches are all individually packed just for you, along with sealed beverages for your safety. And the following Thursday, the very next night at 5 p.m., it'll be a lengthier forum between 5 and 7 over at the Sunny Point Conference Center. That is free entry. There will be a no host beverage station available, $5 donation if you wish. So without further ado, welcome to our school board candidates. Having sat in that hot seat myself, I know what you're going through. Here's how it's going to work today, folks. We have a set of questions, the first of which is kind of introductory in nature. You'll have 2 minutes to answer that. The following questions you should answer in 1 minute or less. The lovely Catherine Tatsuda is in the rear of the room, and she will raise the yellow card when you're halfway through. And the reddish orange card means that you should conclude immediately. So we'll start at this end of the table with our first question. And the first question is, by the way, I will hand you the microphone. You hand it back to me, and you've all been provided with sanitary wipes. So if you'd like to wipe off the microphone, you may do so. The first question is, why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will be your priorities? Why don't you tell us who you are?
Yeah, hi, Tom Hewitt, candidate for school board, current appointed member of the school board. So why do I want to be on the school board? I guess I got my inspiration from my parents. My mother and my father were both educated people. We weren't wealthy. They were both. My father was a college librarian. He was motivated by his love for the arts and the humanities. And I kind of rebelled against them as I grew up and became a scientist. But all along, education and teachers were held in the highest level of esteem in my family, and I was raised that way. I've lived in Ketchikan twice, and I've lived in Juneau twice. I've got a 17-year-old daughter. When she was younger, she started kindergarten, and we sent her to the Ketchikan Charter School. As on the charter school, you had to volunteer as a parent. So my volunteer work was to serve on the board of the charter school. We wound up in Juneau all through elementary and middle school. I served on site councils, which are kind of an intermediary they have in Juneau between the school board and the schools, kind of like some of the duties of a PTA, but basically a conduit for connecting the community, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and the board together. And that was a really rewarding experience for me. I wound up back in Ketchikan 3 years ago on my own, divorced, daughter in school in Portland. Still wanted to be involved and get to know people in town. So when there was a vacancy, I applied for it. And Bridget Matson was running for the vacancy, so I withdrew. Another vacancy came up. We've had a lot of turnover. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Diane Gupatayo. I'm running for re-election. Why do I want to be on the school board? So many reasons. I love this community. I've always worked with young people and been interested in their future and their success. And I feel like being on the board gives me a louder voice in the process and education in this community. I raised 5 children here. 3 of my own kids graduated K-High, and I currently have 2 grandchildren in the school system. I also have teachers in my family. And I myself have a K-9 teaching credential from the state of California. So education is a very important thing for me, and supporting our students. I really want to empower our students more. I think they should be part of our decision-making process more, rather than always adults making decisions for them. And so I really honor having our student member on our board and the voice that they bring. And so anyway, I just love education, love our community, and this is one way I can serve. So thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and Michelle for hosting this event this afternoon. This is a wonderful chance to get to know, and KPU for their attendance, KTKN. Thank you. My name is Kim Hodney. I am running for a one-year seat for the school board this year. I am most interested for this simply because I believe education needs to be kids first, kid-centric. Education is important to how it goes. This year has been unlike any other in any of our recent histories. We weren't around in 1918 to go through the last time the country was this way. I believe that we can do better than how we are now. Transparency is extremely important to me. There seems to, by the showing of the parents, the community coming out to the school board, looking for answers and demanding answers and a direction that the community, this is public education, and the community is the driver for the direction of where this goes. The school board is the overseer. They are the ones that implement what needs to happen and how it's going to happen. And with that input and a hard push, we did get to a point where the Smart Start plan, which is a great idea for contingency, you always need to have a fallback. But we needed to get our kids back to where we were. Ketchikan is somewhat in a bubble. We are not the lower 48. We do not have the challenges that are going on there. We need to get the kids stability. We need stability and we need vision for where we're going. It's my hope by the next semester that we can be far closer to a normal situation for education than where we are today getting started. But we had to start somewhere. And it's been clumsy getting here, but it's important that we get through this. We do the best that we can with where we have and look for our way forward to get it for the children. Education is them first.
My name is Nicole Anderson. Thank you again, Chamber of Commerce, for hosting this. I have lived in Ketchikan practically my whole life. I went through the school districts here. I had an excellent education. We have amazing teachers in our school district. I have 3 kids in our school district. This is where we chose to raise our children for that one of those reasons. To be honest, I have not been involved at this level until recently, and it was with my dismay over the Smart Start program or Smart Start plan. Our children's education is essential, and I think that they need to be in front of their teacher with their classmates. And so I was really glad to see that happen. After the first meeting that I went to, I went home, and the first thing my husband asked me was, "When are you going to run?" And I said, "I'm not." And the more meetings I went to, the more I considered it. And so I am here now running because if I want a change, I need to be the change. So that is me.
Thank you, Chamber of Commerce, for hosting this, and thank you to everybody's behind the table right now. Because in my opinion, the amount of candidates we have for local office right now is a direct reflection of how wonderful a community this is. When you step forward for public office, it's certainly not for the money locally and or power. You're wanting to do something, and I appreciate everybody who's here today. I was thrilled to be appointed in January to the school board to fill an empty seat to continue serving this community. In the short 4 years that I've been here, I've been the commander of the VFW for 2 years, still serving as a lesser officer. I've been the fundraising manager of Ketchikan Little League. I was recently appointed to the Forest Park Service Area Board by the mayor, and I've now served 8 very eventful months on the school board. The school board has a very clear purpose, and that is to provide the highest possible, most equitable education we can to all the children. And the way we do that is through parental input, the expertise of teachers, and good data. Parents are the ultimate authority on what is best for their children. And the teachers are the passionate professionals who should be driving our educational plans. So that is how I make my decisions as a school board member. It's how I want to continue making decisions. I'm proud of what we came to this summer and getting our kids back in front of their wonderful teachers. full time with important safety measures in place and a great contingency plan if the pandemic starts up again. There was understandable frustration with the process. Again, I'm extremely proud of the administration and the job they did to get us here and to include parental input. I appreciated all the parents who came out and spent hours every meeting giving us testimony to get us where we are. But ultimately, I think we came to where we needed to be. But there was frustration with communication, and one of my priorities going forward is to use my expertise and my education. I have a master's degree in strategic public relations, and the superintendent has already agreed to work with me on improving communication for this year.
Hi, my name is Allie Ginter. I'm a mother of 3, soon to be 4, 2 of which are in our school district. I'm a born and raised Southeast Alaskan. I've sat in many of the current educators' classrooms, whether it be as my personal educator or through my work with Community Connections, residential youth care, or interacting with them through OCS. So working with the community and the children of this community is nothing new to me. Public speaking and doing something like running for the board is definitely something that was out of my comfort zone. After getting up and speaking once or twice, I was encouraged by current board members, educators, and other parents like myself to run because they were feeling unheard and uncomfortable standing up and voicing their own opinions. So I took the stand and I voiced those opinions for them, and that's why I'm running for the school board. Thank you.
All righty, we'll move back down to the other end here for the second question. Thanks, Jackie. Is it 2 3-year and 1 1-year, correct? 2 2-year? 2 1-year? Okay. Glad for that clarification. I'll make sure I remember that as the executive director next week. Trick questions from Jackie Mack. All right, we'll start with Diane Gubatayo this time. I'll remind all the candidates, as you can see, like I'm doing right now, please speak very loud and clear into the microphone so that the people watching on television and listening on the radio can hear you. I'm sure they're going to be very interested in your answers. All right, so the next question is in 1 minute or less. Brevity's key here. What is a school board member's role and responsibility, and how does that role differ from the role of the superintendent or administration?
That's a really good question. If you, at our last meeting, we looked at an organization chart. And at the top of that organization chart is the school board. And underneath that, the superintendent, our one and only employee of the board that we supervise. And then the rest of teachers and staff and everything are under the superintendent's lead. So what's our responsibility? Our responsibility is to make sure that the superintendent is accountable and following the strategic plan, putting into place whatever goals and objectives we've determined as a school board, because we are very much active participants in that. We have a 5-year strategic plan. We're 1 year into it, a little over 1 year. The other thing is that we are responsible for the policies in this district and the oversight of the finances. So we have a lot of responsibilities. The policies are a big one. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. The school board's direct responsibility, the only one person that they control is their single employee, which is the superintendent. I believe the school board's main focus is to set the tone for the district and to give the guidance and the resources that the superintendent needs to fulfill the mandates, the visions, and the mission that are set forth for the school board. We set policy, we set the budget, very important, which we work closely with the superintendent and business managers, the administration for putting it together. But all of those below the superintendent are that position's responsibility. We just need to give the support and the direction and guidance for the superintendent to set the tone and to get the education delivered as the board via the community sees the direction and how it needs to be undertaken. So There we go. 1 minute.
Um, as Diane and Kim pointed out, the board is the overseer of the one employee that they have, the superintendent. Everybody else falls under the superintendent's purview. The board needs to set the tone. They need to set policies and procedures and also make sure that the superintendent is following through with those policies and procedures at the lower levels. Finances, budgeting, all of those fall under the scope of the board, and making sure that we're being financially responsible for what is happening in the school district and ensuring that our children are getting the best education through that.
The board's main responsibility is to represent the parents and children of this community, and they do that through reviewing, changing as necessary, and making policies that move us towards that ultimate goal. So when it comes to things like budget, we don't make the budget. Most of our budget is mandated. What we do is we review the budget. We take information from our wonderful budget staff like Kitty Perro, and then we make sure that they're doing things correctly and efficiently. But our main job is to review and implement policy that moves us towards that goal of the best possible education and the most equitable education for the students of Ketchikan, and to make sure that we're properly representing our community, which means listening to the parents and being guided by teachers.
My understanding, the school board's position is, to oversee this superintendent, but also to listen to the parents and the small businesses, the businesses of this community, and really actually listen to them and answer their emails and let them know that they're being heard, and implement that into the meetings that we hold monthly, I believe.
All right, back down. This go round, we'll start with Mr. Hodney. Oh, did I forget? Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add. Those answers were all spot on. I would note that we represent the entire community, not just parent families, although that's our families are our core constituency. We set policy, ensure accountability to the community. And so those were all very well answered. I will yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize. Okay, third question to Mr. Hodney first. How can a Board of Education best communicate with its constituent groups, and have they been successful thus far?
The best form of communication, obviously, through simple dialogue and conversations, making yourself available to the public, whether it be the public approaching you at the podium when you're on the dais for a meeting, be it through email conversations, text conversations. We have so much technology, and always what happens, but it's for the world to see, is the public square, better known as Facebook. Much happens through that, and many people think that bad information goes through Facebook, but it is the public square today, and it allows people to vent. And communication, you have to be approachable. You have to make yourself available and always available. And in this community, people are not afraid to get up and walk up to and speak with their elected officials. Dan Ortez is in the audience today. He's extremely approachable, and the community knows that. The board members are extremely approachable. I've not ever seen them shut someone down when they had a viable question.
I think they need to be accessible always. Right after I announced that I was going to be running for the school board, I was reached out to by several parents with questions on specific items. And it was done through Facebook, Facebook Messenger. We just need to be available. It's not always somebody's comfortable standing before the board and speaking at the podium. And so as a school board member, you need to be approachable. Make it out there that you're willing to talk, and if somebody's got questions, to reach out to you. I don't think that we've necessarily had an issue with the school board. Every time I've reached out to somebody, I've gotten a response. But I do know some people who haven't, and so we need to make sure that equitably we're responding to anybody who reaches out to us and address our concerns.
I think we certainly stumbled throughout the summer, especially with the Smart Starts plan, on proper communication with the community, whether it was parents, whether it was the educators. We didn't do as much as we could have. We've had numerous conversations with Superintendent Loudry about that. I've seen improvement in her communication recently, in the number of communications that are happening. She is listening, and that's something we're going to continue working on. I've also told the superintendent, and we're continuing these discussions, that I believe there should be a dedicated staff member, whether it's a secondary duty or whether they hire somebody that is focused on communications for the district. Because, quite frankly, Superintendent Loudry and everything she deals with, she doesn't always have the time necessary to focus on the communications of what she's doing. And if we have a dedicated professional doing that, they can take what her actions are, communicate that out, and our communication will improve by having someone dedicated to that very important task.
I feel like there's several avenues that we can utilize to keep that open communication. I know Nicole and I are part of a Facebook group called POPs, and we made it after we were frustrated that we felt like we weren't being heard. I've sent several emails or even text messages to Leslie Becker, and she's always been really open to answering. And that's how I plan to be if I do get elected to the board. I just feel any avenue that any of our constituents feel they're comfortable with, we need to be open for. Thank you.
I'm not forgetting this time.
Thank you. The question regarding communication to the school board, yeah, I've heard it a lot. Writing letters, not being responded to, emails and whatnot to the board. I can assure you that every email that I got was read, and in discussion with my fellow board members, they also said the same thing, that we've read every email, and we listen respectfully during public comment periods. So those are the two primary ways for me. Just discussions one-on-one, of course, are great. My contact info is available.
Thank you. I think everyone shared some very good points. I think absolutely responding and listening when people come to us personally at the podium, because I know that's a challenge for a lot of people. Responding to emails and phone calls, absolutely. And inviting participation in planning when possible, and including community members in the planning process. But another thing is for us as board members is to get out out to the schools more. So attend school events, attend PTA meetings, be there, be a listener, be a participant, and be present. And it's not just sitting at the table, it's getting out there and connecting with people out in the community.
Okay, moving down the table to the next question. Looking out to the end of what would be your term in office, list 3 outcomes not currently under consideration by the board that you would like to see accomplished.
I think communication. I think better communication between the superintendent and the parents of the community would be my top one. Again, until May, I wasn't very involved in what was going on with the school board. So I can't say that I'm knowledgeable enough at this point to know where we need to be, but I am definitely ready to delve in. But communication is definitely my top one.
Throughout my term, I'm not really going to come up with my own agenda on what I think the board should be taking care of. That should be parent driven and community driven. I think over the next 3 years, what the board's going to do is start getting done a lot of the things that we couldn't get done this summer because we were so focused on COVID and the Smart Start plan. We're just now starting to get the policy committee back together and review policies and make sure they're up to date. Transportation committee just met, and now we're going to bring our busing system into the 21st century, which is right now using Excel documents to put up bus routes. We're going to find a software program that actually makes that more accessible and gives parents an app where they can get updates on where the bus is and track where the kids are going. There's so much the board wants to do and has on their agenda that we just haven't been able to get to because of this summer. So I don't have extra. I just have a lot of work I want to get done with this board by continuing to be on it and being elected rather than appointed.
I'm with Nicole. I'm guilty of not really participating or paying attention to the school board. And with that, I think that communication needs to be worked on, transparency needs to be worked on, and I'd really like to get more parent involvement. I mean, parents like myself, I very rarely received any kind of email saying, hey, this is what the school board's doing. So I'd like to see more parent reach out or more school board reach out to the parents so we know what's going on.
Yeah, I can't list 3 things that we aren't considering already that we need to. I would need, as Paul said, we need to hear that from you. There are a lot of things that are going on that we are looking at, including things like transparency, communication, etc. The last night, the board had a self-evaluation where we went through a matrix of ranking factors ourselves and had a very frank conversation about where we are, particularly in implementing our strategic plan and what we need to do that. And I don't want to hide behind COVID, but that did take up the vast bulk of our time in the last 6 months, of course. But those things have not been; these other items have not been forgotten about. Thank you.
I actually do have some hopes for our district. I share the statistic 48%, and that is Title I students. So that means 1 out of 2 of our students in this community are living in poverty. And that's a big concern for me, especially now with the economic conditions in our community and the challenges we have with COVID. So trauma responsive, trauma engaged. One thing we learned with Zoom is social and emotional learning is just as important as academic learning. And so to me, those two are interwoven in all our students, and we need to think of the whole student. Another thing is I'd like to see more positive interactions in our district in terms of supervision and shuffling of staff and things like that. And I feel like we can do better and have more positive interactions. And the final thing is I want more student voice in their education. It's funny how the org chart is where the school board's there, superintendent. Where are the students in all of this? At the bottom of the chart? I mean, they are the most important in this process.
Thank you. I've actually given a great deal of thought to direction when you decide to run for office. You have to have a purpose and a reason and a vision for outcome for the tenure that you would be in the office. And the first thing that I would like to do is follow up on my last stint on the school board. I was a head advocate and pushed hard and was successful in the Houghling Elementary School re-roofing project. We pushed that to the top of the CIP and got it done. And what was behind that, and I've seen nothing of it as far as CIP goes, Point Higgins is the next on my list. Their mechanical system, the piping system there is in dire need of repair. The school is old and it needs fixed as badly. Well, I guess second bad because we got Houghling done and their roof done first. And then behind that on the heels, instead of lip service that has gone on for quite some time and small strides have been made, the Native education system needs the attention. The graduation rates of the Native students needs attention. And finally, back to school, we need normal as fast as we can get back to real school for kids.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next question. The COVID 19 pandemic has raised many issues, two of which have been prominent for the district are food distribution and distance learning. Address these 2 points specifically and your thoughts on the district's pandemic response generally.
First, I just want to kind of brag on our school staff. The summer school food program that they put on was fantastic. And the amount of meals that they put out and made sure that our families were fed throughout the summer was great. And I'm excited that they're continuing that. At our last meeting, we approved that the summer program is able to continue for the next couple of months. So we have that expanded program for our kids. And that was just essential for our community, especially the poorer families that Diane was talking about, which is a considerable number in our community. And then distance learning, people need to understand what happened in April when we shut down and what we're having now. It's night and day. It is truly education that is happening through distance learning now because they have spent 6 months building this program and training the teachers. So what you saw in April is not even close to what is offered now. Even if we have to go to that red line of our Smart Start plan and everybody's in distance learning, they still will be learning. Quality education will still happen.
As a parent of a 12-year-old, a middle schooler, and a first grader, the online learning was not cake. And I'm glad that we as a community and the school board saw that Ketchikan is unique and that our Smart Start, or the lack thereof, is unique as well. So I was happy to see that. I do hope that we continue to look at Ketchikan as Ketchikan and not comparing us to Oklahoma or Georgia or what's going on in Florida. Thank you.
The COVID-19 crisis hit us early in March, as we all remember. It was still very unfamiliar, a new situation. We were hearing about people dying in nursing homes in Washington State and in New York City. The response by our superintendent was immediate and well ahead of the curve statewide. We called an emergency meeting and we had to shut down the schools. A few hours later, the governor shut down schools statewide, and consistently we led the state. Our Smart Start plan was used as a model by many other school districts throughout the state. We released the Smart Start plan early in a draft format without a clear understanding of where we would be come August, September, where we are right now. I felt that was an act of transparency to release that as soon as possible as a draft. We had a summer of quite a deal of discussion. Thank you.
So I will echo what Paul said. I was really proud of our business manager and our program for distributing food this summer. Instead of one site at Chombar, we managed to run it at 4 sites. And we were giving out like 1,000 meals a day. So, and the other neat thing about the food distribution program is we had so much community support. We had a lot of contributions for the weekend food program. So we know there are a lot of families that don't have food for over the weekends when the school lunch program isn't operating. And we also expanded that. And I'm really proud of our district for what we did. As far as distance learning, man, I mean, how abrupt was it when people came back from spring break and all of a sudden we're online learning only? I mean, it was a shock to everyone, students and staff. In the last several months, we've had invested a lot in staff training, and we're better prepared now for virtual learning and online learning than we were before. We have the Canvas program, for example. So we've come a long way in how we can deliver education online, virtually. And we have 3 options for families too.
For the food distribution this summer, it was impeccable. They rose far and above the call of duty to make that happen, and it continued to happen, and it served a great number in the community, and they're to be commended as to how that program went. As far as the distance learning goes, when it first happened, of course, it was chaos and it was a joke. From what I hear from, our own experience with my fourth grader and seventh grader, 5 minutes in there, it was not to the fault of the educators because they were caught flat-footed too. How do we make this work, and where do we go from here? And it was extremely clumsy. But before they got into all of the smart start and the developments, I was comfortable when school shut down because I realized that we have fast track, we have pace, we have digital academy. We had very well proven, long standing distance learning programs in place. And instead of really pushing and getting those off the ground, we were all trying to reinvent the wheel and into the smart start plan and this and that, instead of utilizing resources that we had and then building something more usable than how it went.
I want to commend the district and the staff who put on the lunch program. It was well implemented. My kids were able to get meals on a few occasions, but I know a lot of families that utilized that daily, and that was very appreciated. I know in the spring, the online Zoom learning, and I use that term loosely, was a crisis mode. Our teachers did amazing. They checked in on our kids. But it wasn't active learning. It was making sure our kids were feeling okay and safe. And this summer, my two children participated in the summer program. My 11-year-old did amazing. She is a self-starter. She will do anything to learn. My 8-year-old struggled. He needed his grandma there to be able to navigate the system, to be able to get where he needed to go and when he needed to be there. And so I'm over.
I appreciate it. Yeah, 1 minute is really, really difficult. Okay, so we'll take it down to the end of the table, but I'll read the question right here. If you win a seat, you will be responsible for spending about $42 million of other people's money each year. What's your level of financial literacy, and how does it apply to this responsibility?
I myself am a small business owner, and so I am actually slowly taking business classes, and I'm a learn as you go kind of girl. So I will be taking the advice from the experienced board members and cues from our constituents if I do win a place on the board. Thank you.
We have the advantage of a genius business manager in our district, Katie Parrott, whose name's come up twice now. And she's done a fantastic job. A year ago, she found $1 million, and we paid down $800,000 against our health insurance. I get my another person I'd mention is Dan Ortez has done, because he was a teacher in K High and he taught economics, I think. And you go to his coffee discussions on this on state finances. The state does pay for about 75% of our budget, and the local kicks in most of the rest with some federal money on top of that. And so he's been a really great source of information on how our finances are managed, and helps me make good decisions.
Well, one of the honors I've had recently is serving as clerk treasurer and being a more active participant, perhaps in the budget in some ways. One of the things we've done, I think, is built a really good relationship with the borough, and the borough's been it's very important for us, the local funding, and for us to honor that we are spending some hard-earned tax money here in Ketchikan, and so maintaining that relationship. But I've been saying, and I will say, we need to be more active advocating for state funding and supporting our representative, Dan Ortez, at the legislature, because we all know Alaska's in a hurt right now, financially, economically. And so we need, as a community, to stand together, and we need to be proactive and advocate for state funding, because my fear is that there might be more cuts.
The budget is extremely tricky and complex procedure that goes on. If you understand how it comes about, the state money that comes to us is a formula. and the borough money is more discretionary and based on the tax revenues, the property tax, who we all pay. So much of the community has a stakeholding in the funding of our community and a say in how that is presented or brought about. This year we are getting close to, I believe, somewhere in between November and February, we will probably be up against the cap, and that's going to be very tricky in this budget cycle. And with the unenrollment, with losing students that we are, every student we lose equals dollars, and that lowers the cap and makes it more difficult. And if we have to get down to cutting stuff or staff, we've always cut stuff. And with the financials the way they are, I hope we can still cut stuff, not staff.
I won't even pretend that the budget that the school district has to work with is anything like the budget I have to work with. But I am the budget keeper in our house, and I'm ready to delve in and figure out what we need to do and how we need to do it. I am not familiar with the financials of the district, again, because up until recently I haven't been involved. But I do understand that we do have the potential of seeing some cuts from the state, and we need to advocate for our school district so that our students can continue to receive the best education through their teachers without having to cut teachers. Like mentioned there, we don't want to lose our highly qualified teachers. We've got a lot of them. So.
Managing the school district budget is extremely difficult, and our business manager and our staff does an excellent job. Most of the money is mandated to be spent in a very specific way. There's very little flexibility for our business manager to work with it. And despite that, we have low district and administrative costs compared to the rest of the state. And the majority of our funding going to the students. We prioritize people over stuff, which is extremely important in our budgeting. And it's important that we don't micromanage Katie and Superintendent Lauji when they do that, as long as they keep moving in the right direction. They understand there's more efficiencies that can be found to address operational inefficiencies and underutilized programming. But for the most part, I think our business staff does a great job, and our responsibility as a board is to continue that oversight and make sure that they're working in that correct direction and always utilizing people or prioritizing people over stuff and making sure our administrative costs stay low and the majority of our money is going towards actually teaching students.
Okay, it's time for our closing statements. And Catherine, we do have the time, so we'll allow 2 minutes for these if that's all right. Briefly share with us one thing that is important to you that was not addressed today. And also share with us one thing that people may not know about you.
I can't think of anything that wasn't covered today. That it was a great questions, and people brought up all the really serious concerns here. My biggest concern is just the safety of our students. This virus is real, and I believe in the science behind it. I guess something that people don't know about me is I used to work in HIV research 20 years ago. I worked with live HIV in a lab. I worked for a contractor. It was under the National Institutes of Health, which means I worked for Dr. Fauci. We cured AIDS, and we have drugs for AIDS that we haven't completely cured it. But the science that came out of NIH led to therapies that have ended the worst effects of this epidemic, at least for people who can afford these drugs. I think by implementing common sense measures, we've done a great job in our schools. My heroes are the parents who sat home with their kids all spring and summer. My heroes are the cooks in the school. My heroes are the teachers who are out there on the front lines every day screening kids, and the administrators and the rest of the community that's pulled together so well in this crisis. Thank you.
I guess one thing that we didn't talk about and is really important to me, and I've shared this in the past, is what is now in education called trauma responsive, trauma engaged. I mentioned earlier the 48% of our students that are Title I students. And we know that this whole past pandemic thing for our teachers have suffered trauma too, because it wasn't easy for them having to come back and suddenly be separated from their students and trying to figure out how to educate their students. They're so passionate about that. And I agree with you on that one, Tom. Our teachers are totally heroes, and the parents too, my goodness, who had to somehow make it work at home as well. I saw it in action with my own grandchildren, and I saw my daughter trying to teach on her own, and then I had to help cover Zoom sessions with my grandkids. So I know it was a challenge for people, but trauma responsive is something I hope we will work towards, because our students, the social emotional aspect of them, to me, is equally as important as their academic achievements. And if we pay attention more to the social emotional, I guarantee you we will see better results in the academics. And it's a challenge. We have the multi-tiered student support system that we're working on putting in place in this district. Something real quick that you may not know about me is I served a term in the Peace Corps. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Philippines. I still speak some Tagalog. Walang anuman, salamat sa inyong lahat. And so, I mean, so I love international things as well. And I'm really proud of our KI Kings and their Kings for Peace. And we're going to have a proclamation at our next board meeting celebrating that. So anyway, that's a little secret that folks may not know about me.
To start, something that many may not know about me is I have over a century of student participation. I and my wife are the proud parents of 10 children. So that's where the century of public education comes into play. I have seen all the teachers, I have seen all of the problems, I have seen everything that can come out of a public education system firsthand in many respects. And that is a blended family with my lovely wife of 25 years. When we married, that brought my 4 and her 3. We had 7. After 5 years of deliberation, all of a sudden we were 8. But obviously for us, 8 wasn't enough. And so since then we have 2 beautiful daughters, adopted daughters, one Alaska Native, very special to us all. And in that, kids, and we spent a time, I think it was 6 years as therapeutic foster care parents here in Ketchikan itself. I've seen it all. My passion is kids and kids education. Kids first. It's where it has to come by. The teachers deliver it. The teachers are important. The parents know what they need for their children. And in this community, no one's afraid to get up and speak. And that is what is so wonderful about this. And what I hope to come out of with this next year is pushing that through some stability and a vision, because it's not going to be the same as it ever was, but I want it to be as close as what it can be. The kids, I want my kids in school today to enjoy and have the same educational experience that I was afforded to when I was a kid in school. And they're out playing games, they're having sleepovers, but you go to school and it's a whole different thing. We need to get back to what I would call as close to a reality and function, the community, the fun that we have that's there. And with this cloud of COVID hanging over our heads, the lower 48 can have it hang on their heads the way. We have a wonderful bubble here, and I want to make the most from that bubble that we can. So it is kids first. Thank you.
What you might not know about me is I have a degree in elementary education. I have spent the last 16 years as an insurance agent at Davies Berry Insurance. I graduated from the University of Idaho with that degree and came home. I actually worked with Lori Ortez for a year as a para, loved it, but also opted not to teach at that point. So I found a different career. Another thing you might not know, being a part of that POPS group and standing before the Board of Education or school board, asking that our kids be in school full time. I have spent the last 3 weeks sewing about 300 masks, and I have another 200 still sitting on my kitchen table. So We know where I will be over the next couple of weeks, so that our kids could be in school, so that they could have fun masks and still be safe. Because the top priority for me is that our kids are in school, that hopefully we can get back to normal, or as close to a semblance of normal as we can provide during this pandemic. But my goal is to keep our kids in school, because we are unique. Ketchikan is different from the lower 48, and we need to recognize that.
Something folks may not know about me, my family and I lived for 3 years in Okinawa, Japan, which was a wonderful experience. And because I spent most of my adult life until recently in the Marine Corps, when 2021 is over and I've made it through that, this will be the location that I have been in the longest, the one place that I have lived the longest. And it will happen because we're going to be here until my 12-year-old graduates K-High. So, so that's a fun fact, I guess. What wasn't discussed? Well, it was mentioned by one of the candidates, but one of the issues I wanted to bring back up is the performance of schools. Now, we're ranked, I think, 47th in the country in quality of education, even though we spend the 5th most amount per pupil. And obviously, that's a problem statewide. Ketchikan tends to do a little better than others. But I think one of the quickest ways, there's no super fast way to improve it, but one of the quickest way to improve it is to improve our work on Alaska Native outreach and what we can do for those students, their graduation rates, grades, different issues that they're having throughout our school system, which is why the recent government-to-government consultation we had with KIC was so important, where practically the entire board, especially myself, expressed, hey, I don't have the cultural perspective required to come up with solutions to a cultural issue, an Alaska Native issue. So that's why it was so important for us to have that meeting, and why President Scan came out of it saying he was hopeful and the rest of us were hopeful is because that recognition was there, that it's not really we who can come up with the solutions at the school board, but that KIC and the other Alaska Native entities in Ketchikan to come to us and tell us what we can do, and for us to find ways to implement those solutions. And once we improve the outcomes for Alaska Native children, our overall outcomes improve because we have the same goal as the outcomes.
Something you may not know about me. I received my CNA certification in California while my husband and I were stationed there for his term of the Marine Corps. I moved back to Ketchikan and I thought that nursing would be my passion. I ended up getting a position at the charter school as an RTI para, and that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. And so I became employed at Community Connections, and that's when I learned that I really loved community connections. I loved working with the families and the children of our community, and I learned that we are so vastly different than the lower 48 in so many different ways. And then in being employed by OCS and having the ICWA training, I used to be one of those people that didn't understand why it was so important that Native children be placed with Native families. And taking the ICWA training really has shown me that. And then learning that our district is putting a high importance on implementing Native education into our education system. Something that hasn't been brought up, I'm new to the school board, as I've stated before, so I can't really think of anything, but I'm willing to learn and I can't wait to learn.
Thank you all so very much. I really applaud you all for stepping up to serve our community. It's really refreshing to see so many candidates across the board this year. That is fantastic. As a reminder to those who may be watching and or listening on KTKN, please reserve your spot for the upcoming candidate forums. Borough Assembly candidates will be here at noon next Wednesday. There will be a meal served. You need to reserve in advance due to room limits. We've been practicing our social distancing, as you can see. Also, the very next day, next Thursday, the 24th, will be the City Council candidate forum. That is at 5 p.m. until 7 p.m. at the Sunny Point Conference Center. And while there is no meal served, we still ask that you reserve your free ticket so we can have a count and know how to set the room. And of course, many thanks to all of our press friends that are here, KPU TV, KTKN, and the Daily News. We really appreciate your coverage. The fact that you are informed voters makes for a better community. Thank you so much.